Our last and final speaker today is Bobby Singh Bansal. He's a British-born Sikh historian, writer, and filmmaker. His interest is in Sikh heritage and culture, and this has allowed him to interact with the Sikh diaspora all over the world. He's attended major international Sikh and Indian conferences and has given numerous lectures on the theme of Sikh heritage and history. He's a passionate advocate of promoting Sikh heritage and culture on a global scale, especially in Pakistan. In 2003, he became president of the Sarkar Khalsa Foundation and has worked on the restoration of the tomb of Maharaja Sher Singh in Lahore. Please join me in welcoming Bobby Singh Bansal. When I say flash that, it means you've got 2 minutes.
Finally. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Sikh Foundation in reaching a milestone of their 50th anniversary. 1967 is an iconic year, not for Sikh Foundation, but it's also the year in which I was born. So in 2 weeks' time, I celebrate my 50th birthday. So a double celebration. We've got 15 minutes to talk, and I've been given notice that 2 minutes, she's going to give me advance notice that I've got 2 minutes left. So I could talk hours for hours on this subject. We're so passionate about this subject, but my journey to Pakistan started in 1989. And how did it start? Somebody gave me a book on Punjabi culture, on Punjabi folklore, on the 5Ks, and I knew nothing about the history. And growing up in the 80s, we knew nothing about our history until 1984 happened. That was the turning point. But a friend of mine gave me this book, and on the last page, there was 2 pictures. One of Maharaja Ranjit Singh and one of Maharaja Dalip Singh. And it was titled Sher Punjab and the Prince in Exile. So I thought, who are these two people? I've never heard of them. So I went to the library, got a few books, and then I discovered that there's a Sikh empire. There was this Maharaja. There's this prince that's buried in England, which is 2 hours from my house. So I rang my friend up. I goes, have you heard of Dalip Singh? He goes, no. I goes, right, we have to go to Elvedon. Within 3 months, I was in Lahore, much to the frustration of my family. What the hell are you going to Lahore for? I goes, look, Dad, there's a Sikh empire, I need to go. So this triggered off a journey which today has still continued, and it's not stopped. And what I've discovered over the last 25 years in Pakistan, that most of the Sikh structures are fading, are being demolished, are being converted into shopping plazas. This is a map of Ranjit Singh's kingdom, but I want to show you this map because most of the Sikh structures that were built during the Sikh reign are mostly now located in Pakistan. And one of the first structures to see when you visit Lahore is Ranjit Singh's palace or his court. You can see the black and white image, and you can see the image that's taken in 2015, and the top portion no longer exists. That was demolished late 1890s. And this is happening with numerous monuments in Pakistan. These are protected and intact because they are within the Lahore fort. But if you was to go outside Lahore, a lot of monuments that were built, a lot of mansions, a lot of Havelis, a lot of forts are slowly disappearing. And so in 2003, I set up the SK Foundation, and primarily to raise awareness that if these structures are demolished or they're converted or they are wiped out, then that history, that legacy, that heritage will be wiped out. And I want my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren to see these structures and these monuments that are in Pakistan. I know a lot of people are saying that Pakistan give a damn, but you know what? They are doing more for Sikh structures and monuments than the Indian Punjab government are doing. And when I arrived in Lahore in 1989, this is the first photograph I took of Maharaja Ranjit Singh's tomb. Now, I took the other photograph in 2015. And if you notice that in the center, what was the lotus urns where some of the ashes of Ranjit Singh was interned are no longer there. The small lotus urns were of his 4 queens, and the other were of the slave girls. And apparently, I discovered that in 1999, some Sikhs came from Amritsar, and for some apparent reason, they removed these urns because they did not conform to Sikhi, and they flattened it, and that's what we see of the tomb today in 2015. On top of that, if you look on the left picture, you can see all the gemstones, the yellow, blue gemstones around the tomb. And if you look on the right, they have all been removed by people who come on pilgrimage, who stay here, and they've been taking them out with their knives. So the whole structure has changed since I first visited in 1989 to 2015. This is Nau-Nihal Singh's Haveli, the grandson of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. It's probably one of the most beautiful buildings in Lahore relating to that Sikh period. Today it's called the Victoria's Girls' School. But if you look at the whole structure, it was such a gorgeous building, and it still is. But if you look at the exterior, the facade, it's slowly fading away. Fortunately, if you look at the left picture, this was the Sheesh Mahal of Nau-Nihal Singh, more or less his bedroom, which is on the top floor. This has been locked, and therefore it's been preserved. But if you look at the frescoes and the wall paintings and the ceiling, the Sheesh Mahal, the ainakari, the glasswork, we can't replicate this. We cannot reproduce this. We don't have the artists. So I felt that every time I used to go, every 6 months I used to be in Pakistan, I would suddenly, to my horror, a building was not there. There was a shopping center. Or if there was a mansion, it was now a madrasa or a mosque. So I started working with the Department of Archaeology and the Directorate General of the Walled City Authority in Lahore, which is part of the government of Punjab, Pakistan, in order to raise awareness and to preserve and to restore these monuments. And not just in Lahore, but outside Lahore as well. This is a tomb of Maharaja Sher Singh. The first picture on your left, black and white, was taken in 1979. And this was given to me by my friend Fakir Ajazuddin. You can see the tomb of Sher Singh and his queens, Rani Randavi and Prem Kaur on the left. The monument on the bottom left is the same tomb. This was taken in 1992. I took this in 1992. And if you remember the incident in Ayodhya, where they demolished the mosque, the backlash in Pakistan was targeted on Sikh monuments because the Pakistanis could not tell the difference between a Hindu structure and a Sikh structure. For them, it was just the same. And so numerous Sikh monuments were vandalized, were destroyed, and Sher Singh's tomb suffered. And look at this was actually painted all green and red to merge with the mosque nearby. And to my horror, when I saw this, my heart just fell. In 2014, along with the Department of Archaeology, we tried to restore this monument, but the frescoes and everything inside the interior work, we could not replicate. So it's very important that we preserve and we restore these structures in Pakistan. This is where Maharaja Sher Singh was assassinated in 1843 on 15th of September. You can actually see the bullet marks in the corner. It's called the Shah Bilawal Haveli. And as Peter mentioned, when he was assassinated by the Sandhanwali Sardars Ajit Singh and Lehna Singh, we had the Haveli restored in 2015. through the Department of Archaeology and the Punjab government, we could never get to that same standard, but at least we kind of restored, we've put the doors in, we've kind of preserved the ceiling, but all the frescoes inside have been wiped out. This is just one structure. There's thousands of structures in Pakistan. Some are not even known. Because these are in Lahore, they're easy to access. I've been working on this for the last 10 years because I feel that if we don't raise awareness, then these structures will be no longer there. This is in Gujranwala. This is the Haveli of Sukra Chakia Sardars. This is the residence of Maharaja Ranjit Singh's father, Mahar Singh. And it was about to collapse. It was completely vandalized in 1992. Inside, they had whitewashed and graffiti marks on the frescoes and the wall panels. The doors were removed, the windows were removed. But fortunately, last year, 2016, we managed to restore it. Not to its former glory, obviously, but at least it stands as it is. And I've noticed that these small Nanak-Shahi bricks that these structures are built of, they are slowly being stolen by locals. So it's very important that these structures are preserved for posterity, because I always say that our heritage, Sikh heritage and culture, is 85% is in what is today Pakistan. If we were to remove the Golden Temple out of Amritsar, I doubt anybody would go to Amritsar. Some other structures outside Lahore that I'm working on. The top left, this is the Haveli of Ranjit Singh on the river Chenab. If you go to Wazirabad, you take a left to Rasul Nagar. This is also the site where the Anglo-Sikh War, the Battle of Ramnagar, took place in 1848. This structure was two-story. I took this picture in 2004. It used to be a grand building, carved doors, frescoes, and it was situated right along the banks of the Chenab. And Maharaja Ranjit Singh and his family would visit this place every summer with his family. And today it's abandoned. People were playing cricket here. The doors have all been stolen. This picture is 7, 8 years old, and today, I couldn't get the photograph I wanted to show you today. It's no longer there. It's just one pile of rubble. It's completely collapsed. I was just too late to save this monument. Even the plaque, some residents of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, someone has stolen that as well. The picture on the right, I think Jean-Marie showed this picture of the Wazirabad fort. This was built by General Avitable. So when Ranjit Singh would visit Jammu or he would go to Peshawar, he would halt at Wazirabad. It's a beautiful fortress. It's got a beautiful Havelis inside. The only problem is, it's been occupied by 6 families, all at loggerheads. Half the family want to sell it, half the family want to preserve it and restore it. And if you go inside, there's just some beautiful mansions inside. And this is the entrance of the fortress when Avitable, the Italian general, was the governor of Wazirabad in 1830. At the bottom left, I don't know if you recall that the floods of Pakistan in 2010, this unique monument, I mean, this is the tomb of Akali Phula Singh. He died in the Battle of Nau-Nihal in 1823. Ranjit Singh personally cremated him at this very spot. And the water level had reached right up to the top dome. And I found the minarets, there's 4 minarets which are missing. They were near the riverbed on the banks of the Kabul River. The building behind it was the Akali barracks, which some local farmer has now occupied, and he's got about 20 cows in there. They don't give a damn about this structure. This is such an historical dwelling. And I'm working with the KP province, with the government and with the district commissioner. to restore this tomb. And I think we're working on it from April next year, because this is a landmark. And I'm trying to take tourists out there. When we go on the Sikh pilgrimage tours to Nankana Sahib and Punjab Sahib, this is barely, an hour away towards Peshawar. So I'm trying to put this on our itinerary just to show people that this is such a unique historical site where the most fanatical Akali Pula Singh was cremated. The picture on the right is of the Haveli of Rani Nakan, who was the wife of Ranjit Singh and mother of Maharaja Sher Singh and grandmother of Nau-Nihal Singh. This is within Sheikhupura Fort. The frescoes inside this building are so unique, amazing, still intact, faded, yes, but the whole, you can tell how much money must have been spent on this building. It's an awesome, a wonderful structure, but it's falling apart. You can see the center of it, the right portion, is a bit like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It's subsided. I'm trying to get the authorities, it boils down to a lack of funds. We can provide so much funds by getting sponsors and funding. And the government is trying to now, they've earmarked this as their next project. But that was 5 years ago. So I'm trying to save this money before it completely collapses. Because it's one of the most remote, not remote, but one of the most historical monuments in Sheikhupura. I just showed you a few images. Like I said, I can talk for hours on this subject. My last image, so we've gone right up to the Afghanistan-Pakistan border now. We've got the Peshawar Fort. I was very fortunate to take this by helicopter, courtesy of the Pakistani Army, in 2012. And you can see the outer walls were built by Hari Singh when he became governor of Peshawar in 1834. There's actually a Sikh inscription inside where Hari Singh's residence was located inside the Bala Hisar Fort. To the right is the Shabqadar Fort, which is about 12 miles north of Peshawar. See, people forget. People only remember Jamrud Fort, which is on the lower left. Why Jamrud? Because that's where Hari Singh had died in battle at the Battle of Jamrud in 1837. So that's why people remember it. But people do not realize that Hari Singh had built 7 to 8 forts parallel to the Afghanistan border simply to seal the frontier off. So if we start from the top, we've got Michini Fort that he built in 1834. All these forts were completed after his death. So Michini Fort is 25 miles north of Peshawar. We come down to Shabqadar Fort. Then we come to Bala Hisar Fort. Then on the Khyber, we come to the famous Jamrud Fort, where the famous battle took place in April 1837. This mud fort is still the same. I was here only, 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago. Every time I go to Jamrud, my heart, I feel something. I get very emotional to go inside. And all these forts are now controlled by the Pakistani army. It's so strange that the Pakistani army are using the Sikh forts against their campaigns against the Taliban and ISIS. These mud structures. I mean, the Jamrud Fort is still made of mud. There's a few British barracks inside, but everything is original. The walls are 3 meters thick. And if you look at the white structure on the left, that is a tomb of Hari Singh Nalwa, where he was cremated. I just want to conclude on one thing. Last year, we were involved in a project, along with Jean-Marie, my friend there, in installing a statue in France of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. That has now kick-started several other projects. So in Italy next year, we're planning a similar project, a statue of Ventura and Ranjit Singh. But last October, I went to Pakistan, and I took Raj Kapani with me, because he was so eager to visit Lahore. And after a few days, we were sitting outside the Lahore fort, outside Rani Jinda's Haveli, which is now the Sikh Museum. And we were having coffee, and people were coming up to me for a selfie, for a photograph. And I said, hang on. I go, look, what's this image? What's this building behind me? And the answer was in Punjabi, koi mandir hoga. It must be some temple, Hindu temple. I go, it's not. I go, it's the palace of Ranjit Singh. It's the Kacheri. It's the Art Dara. I gave a couple of lectures last year in October. And we had about 250 students come to the University of Punjab in Lahore. And the first image I showed was of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. And out of the 250 students, I said to put your hands up who recognizes this picture. And only one student had raised their hand. Sikh history is not taught in Pakistan. If you ask any Pakistani student, all they know about is the Mughal period, the British period, and partition. I used to ask my father, why do you always write East Punjab? When I was about 10 or 12, my dad used to write letters, airmail, these blue airmail letters to his father, to my grandfather. And he'll put Fagwara Kaputla, East Punjab. My dad, what's East Punjab? There's another West Punjab. I go, tell me, what's West Punjab? And he never did tell me. So there's a lot of ignorance, there's a lot of neglect that Sikh history is not on the curriculum, is not on the syllabus of Pakistani education. And this is something I'm trying to work with, to put Sikh history, and I'm working with a lot of local historians in Pakistan, that why have you erased? Because you've missed out, you're omitting 50 years of Sikh rule in Lahore. We've got iconic buildings in Lahore, and yet no student knows nothing about Maharaja Ranjit Singh, which is the sad part. So last October, why me and Raj were sitting outside, just dwelling on our visit, we thought there's something missing in Lahore. And what was missing was a statue of Ranjit Singh, where his capital was, where he ruled from. So only a few weeks ago, I managed to, SK Foundation, my company, managed to get approval by the government of Punjab to install a statue on horseback of Ranjit Singh between the Art Dara and Rani Jinda's Haveli. So that's what me and Raj are now working on, and hopefully by later this year we'll have it installed and raised, just to educate those in Pakistan that this was a Sikh kingdom here, Lahore was a Sikh capital, and to raise awareness and to keep that legacy thriving around the world. That here was this great leader, secular king, mostly Muslims in his court. What a rule that was. Thank you very much.